Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the Trader Vision 2020 workshop for July 11th, 2018. For anybody who doesn't know, my name's Ed Carter, and I'm the architect behind Trader Vision. I'll try to keep this to 45 minutes or an hour. Let me just go through what we're going to cover. I'll do some trade updates on, I guess, 3 trades that we have closed out. We've only got 1 trade open based on the blog. Basically, the trade jitters are just crushing us. We were stopped out of 2 trades today. It's kept us from even entering a couple trades as well. And I'll show you what we're at. I want to do a demo of some new charting features that they have not been released to you yet, but we are in the final testing and they will be released in the next few days, assuming we don't find any major bugs. I'm pretty excited about them, and also talk about some other things we've got coming down the road. Of course, I'll answer all your questions, and then we'll do some trade setups. I guess I'll talk about what's currently on the development schedule before I get started here. The charting improvements, I have a programmer dedicated to that, and he will continue to add some things. One of the things that we're going to add, oh wow, looks like I've got a lag. I will wait for that to resolve. Man, that's awful. I blame Steve. He must have done something to the room. Or I guess it could have been the Windows update I did today. But at any rate, charting improvements we've got working on. I'll cover some of those. I may need to. Actually, I've got fast internet. It's just the connection to Omnovia. Or Webinato now, I guess. 2 things that are very exciting. One is I've got one of my developers working on building the V-stop indicator for our charting package, and since Steve's here, also the stochastics RSI. So we'll be able to add those to our charts here soon. I can't say any day, but soon. That has just started. And then, of course, all these charting improvements will help with the scanning widget, because the charting package will be used to review the results of the scans. And we have another developer working on that as well, and he's burning the midnight oil, so we're hoping to get close to demoing something in the next few weeks. So that's where we're at. We will then go into broker integrations and user-specified trade rules. For example, perhaps you want to look at the 3 EMA versus the 8 EMA as one of your trade conditions that you evaluate each trade against, or maybe you want to look at volume over a certain level, or you want to look at the trend based on the 8 EMA or based on the the 34 EMA, or however you like to look at it. You'll be able to specify those yourself. And then the next major project, and no, it is not started yet, and it will be a major project, will be working on options functionality. So those are the things currently on the schedule, and that's where we're headed. Let me drop out of this and cover some of those trades. The first thing is, in no particular order, Abercrombie and Fitch. We entered one of these days here. I believe it was this day, on the breakup through the 50. It held along, and then the last 2 days we have petered back out, following back down. I'm sorry. This was a short, so I can't remember. It may have been I guess I'm going to need to look at the darn trade. Okay, so 7.2 and 7.5. Okay, so it was a short entry here. We were stopped out here on 7.5, which was this day here at the high of the day. Basically got a little bit of pushback from the 50 on that day. Probably had the stop too tight, should have been set on the other side of the 50. Back here. The next one is Sonic, and that was a long. And Sonic 7.6, so that's about here, I think. Yeah. So Sonic, we went long here on this day as we got up above our price, but it fell back through and it basically never got going, and we got stopped out today, just barely. If we again had a looser stop, instead of working off of this level here to act as our support protection, we might have had a little bit better result there. And what was the third one? ENPH. Okay, so this was stopped out at farm day, evening star here today. This was an entry here. I believe it was yesterday. No, maybe it was, yeah, it was Monday, or no, it was Tuesday. We entered here, and then on today's news we gapped down, and that was what I was looking to protect our stop across these highs here recently, and it failed and took us out here. That's just the way it goes. Can't do anything about that. That was semiconductors. And I suppose they are very nervous about trade issues in semiconductors with the China thing. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep slowing down here because of that webinar lag. I apologize. Jeez. Okay, so that's what we've got on the existing trades. Let's look at some of the charting features that I can share now. Again, I'll wait on the screen to catch up. The first thing that you will notice is that we now have a white background. In fact, you can have any background you want by doing a right click. You can do chart properties. You can select any color in the rainbow as your background. I prefer white, but you can you can go to black, red, whatever turns you on color-wise. That's how you can make up your charts. Yeah, and so then you can also set your candles. You may have noticed that we now have black and white candles. That's because I have chose it. We'll be adding in labels here, but this is for a down candle, and this is for an up candle, and again, any colors under the sun that you want. The wicks, my programmer has called them high and lows. You can set those to be, in this case, I prefer to leave mine as black, but you can set them to be the same color as the candles. I don't like that as well, but some people might. One other thing is you can set this to default so that this is the default style every time you open. So if you open 5 chart widgets, they would all open this way. And then we will also put together some preset examples. So black and white candles, green and red candles, those sorts of presets that instead of going in and selecting them, you can just click on the preset and choose that as well. So that is all under the next few days that will be released. One thing I do want to point out is if you go at the current time, if you go to a black background, the black candles disappear. So you need to change the high and low. Let's move that to some sort of gray. And the black candles need to be made more of a gray as well. And that will allow you to see the black candles. So that's just for, I think that'll be fixed before we release it, but just so you know that we have that issue. If you choose a black background. What am I doing wrong here? Let's go back to white. There we go. So we've got a very nice setup here for backgrounds and colors and what have you. Another thing that we have that is pretty impressive, you can see I'm showing 100 candles here. If I just use my scroll, I can go down to as few or as many as I want. If you use TC2000, you're restricted to 200 candles, period. But if this chart has 10,000 candles, I can keep scrolling till I see all 10,000. So that's going to be a very nice tool. It's hard for me to point to, well actually maybe I can use my drawing tools. But if you notice over here, and then when I put my, and down here, you will notice that we now have the date that you have your cursor over outlined, and the price that your cursor is at is outlined as well. That makes it nice, and nice yellow bold numbers so you can see what's going on. Of course, your open, high, low, and close and volume information is there. Another thing that we have fixed that is nothing major. I mean, it's what you would expect of a charting package, but we are just getting it moving for us. So let's say that you want to do a 50-day moving average and give me a bright blue. How about like that? What did I touch? Okay, there's my 50-day moving average. Get back down here to something better. And let's add a 200-day moving average. I keep changing screens. So there's your 200-day moving average. You can see that's just a rounded bottom breakout. If you want to add the T-line, we'll just make that black. There's the T-line, and you can of course change the width and type of line that you have and all that good stuff. And this is persistent now across tickers, so if we went to the SPY, we would have those moving averages staying with us. And in fact, basically everything above this line will be chart independent. Yes, Arnaldo, it's being recorded. And everything below the line, except for Fibonacci's, will be layout independent. So if you put Bollinger Bands on, it will be on every chart you look at. The same thing is true of RSI, MACD, the moving averages, exponentials, and so forth. So that will be nice as we go forward. As I said, I've said this before and people think I'm crazy, but our target is to be as good as TC2000. Another thing that we're working on right now is a negative sign. So if you want to look at an inverted chart, you would put negative SPY. can I have negative? Yeah, you can have multiple. You can have as many charts open as you want, and each one of them you could choose a different, one black, one white, for example, as a background, or one with the 250 and one with something else. Yeah, it's they've had a 20-year head start, but I get to learn off of what they've done, and it's going to take time, but we're headed there. We're headed there. So again, that's another feature that is currently being developed, and I think that will make a big difference and start making the use of our charts something that is quite usable. Quite usable. At the moment, I still think TC2000 is superior, and I always have, and that's what I use. So, but that's something I want to change. So that's where we're at now on the charting. I'm trying to think of what else I might want to put in here. I talked about the presets. I guess that's it for now. So that's what we've got going with the charting package, and I think it's a big step, but it's just the first step, and we will continue to get better. Let's see, the next thing that I wanted to cover. I guess I will open it up if anybody has questions, and then we'll plan some trades. I see some typing there, so I'm going to hang on. Do I have any searches? If you're talking about scans, the answer is yes. There's nothing that I can show you. Yeah, there's nothing that I can show you right now, but we're working on the set of what will happen is the basic scanning widget will include a number of basic scans built in, and that's similar, but to a much greater deal than what TC2000 has. TC2000 comes with whatever this is, a dozen preset scans or pre-built scans. Our platform will come with about 30 or so, maybe three dozen, and they will be, give or take, half bullish and half bearish, and those will be the basics. The second phase is that we will allow you to request from us a purchase if you want a specific customized scan, so something specific you don't want to write yourself. And the third phase is an interface quite similar to their PCF formula, where you can write your own scan. So very simplistic language. You don't have to learn a programming language. With some examples and so forth, that you can write your own scans. And again, you will have that choice. If you want to write your own, you can write your own. If you want to hire it done, you can do that as well. It's completely up to you and what you would like. We will probably offer some packages of specific groups of scans that people ask us for a lot, and offer those. The first scan that we are working on right now for testing purposes is to do I'm not sure I understand that question, but let me think about it here for a minute. The first scan that we're using for testing on our server side to make sure that we have the performance and getting real-time prices and so forth is the rounded bottom breakout scan. So on the screen showing open closed, I did not see ENPH. I don't know what you mean. Could you restate that question? Open closed. I'm not sure what. Yeah, I don't quite understand that question. Oh, I'm sorry if you are talking about. I think I understand now. So you were talking about. Let's go to the blog account. ENPH is right here. And that does show it was closed at 7-11. So if that's what you're talking about, yeah, then it was closed. You might be talking about this because I changed accounts. And because I changed accounts, I don't want to. I'm trying to keep the blog account strictly for the daily blog posts that I do, and so anything I do in a webinar I put into something else, into a different account. So that's the only reason I changed accounts. That probably is what confused you. Okay, any other questions? Doesn't look like anybody's typing. We can come back to them if that's the case. I had one request to look at a chart, and so I will start with NTAP, and we will talk from there. I'm just waiting on the screen to catch up. Steve, if you be, I got to keep waiting on the screen to catch up. This is ridiculous. So if you're talking about colors, yes, there will be default setups in terms of colors. If you're talking about the moving averages and so forth, yeah, no, we're not going to be doing tabs for different time frames, at least not yet. And the reason for that is that I don't have a reliable and fast source for all the varied intraday data. So it's very difficult for me and very resource intensive, to come up with, for example, 1 minute candles and 5-minute candles and 15-minute candles. Yeah, you could have, as I said, you could have 5 chart widgets open, and each one could be a different setup for you. Well, not really, Steve. If you're looking at an individual ticker, it's not delayed. But if you were doing for scanning purposes where you want the data for 8,500, let's just do SPY here. If you during the thank you, Arnaldo. Yeah, so one symbol is real time, but if you're looking to do a scan where you need the prices for 8,500 tickers, I simply can't get real-time data on 8,500 tickers. And so the real-time data is probably, it takes us about 1.5 to 2 minutes to gather the real-time price on all 8,500 tickers, and therefore that will mean that your your scans will be based on like 2-minute delayed data, that sort of thing. There's nothing I can do to get around that at this moment. But again, if you're using a daily candle, that's probably not a terrible thing. If you were trying to day trade with this, you would need intraday time candles, and that would be a problem. And eventually we may get there. It's a question of having enough users to justify tens of thousands of dollars in expense for that sort of data package. Can the chart tab name be changed? At the moment, no, it can't, other than it will show you what ticker that you're looking at. So if this one was EP, that'll show you that this is the EP chart, and that is that. But let me put that in. Chart tab name by setup. I will look into that as well. I'm sure we can do it. It's just nothing that we have thought of or done yet. But yeah, that would make perfect sense. So you could have one that was your whatever, your black and white chart, and one that your moving averages chart, or what have you. So thank you, Kurt. I will add that. It's just not developed at this point in time. Okay, so again, let me wait on the lag to catch up, and I will go back and look at NTAP before I was asked about this earlier today. Okay, as we can see, here's the longer term trend. Here's the short-term trend over the last month and a half, 2 months. You can see that we had a strong bullish run up here and ran into some resistance, and we have been consolidating since. It's not a tight consolidation area. I would almost put a tight box around these last 3 candles and hope for a 4th one there before we run up. But we are continuing to hold this little trend here, so hopefully we'll get a breakout of this box pretty soon. If I were to be buying this is how I would draw my fibs. Let me just get rid of some colored lines here to make it easier to see. So off the bottom of this big candle, you might even call that a belt hold candle, and off the high of the 621 candle, that's going to be the fib run that we're measuring off of. We've had a 23.6 pullback and just a consolidation here for a month. Looking for a breakout to buy with the 38.2 on the 23.6 pullback as the first target, and then 61.8 as the second. And the reason we're using fibs is because we're at all-time highs, and if we break out here, we're assuming this trend line will hold, generally speaking. So that's how I would look at that that trade. And if we want to plan a trade for that, see if it works out. Let's see, NTAP. It's got earnings out of the way. Very nice setup with 5 bullish candles, some bullish charts, but nothing terribly bullish in terms of patterns. Let's look at a 1 entry, 2. I guess the screen's still catching up here. I'll wait. Okay. If we were looking for, because this has had a consolidation box, Jake, I'm going to buy the breakout of the consolidation, not wait for it to break out and retest it. The line that I see us needing to retest is this down here, and we have been sitting right on top of it and bouncing up off of it the last 3 days. So I'm comfortable with a breakout buy here, and let's call that, what did they say here, 80.45 with a stop down here below this, 78.49, so let's call it 78.40. And this first target up here at about 85 bucks. And a second target up here about 88.40 is good enough for me. With this account, which I believe is $50,000, I could be wrong, but I believe it's 50,000. It says we can do 60 shares and stay below 125 bucks in risk. That's doable. It's 3.8% of the account. And with those 60 shares, it's going to be hard for us to make our money if we're trying to make 350. At that first target, we're only picking up 136 bucks. If we had to sell the whole position there, we'd make 273, and that's not giving us, it gives us our 2-to-1, 2.22 to 1, but it doesn't give us a chance to make our goal. So we would have to see if we can make our goal by hitting that second target. And hitting that second target, we can make that goal. So whether or not we enter this trade would be contingent upon two things. One, breaking out, and two, that we're comfortable that we can make not only the first target, but also the second target up there, because we've got to reach 86.28, so someplace right around here, in order to achieve our goal. So we've got to get past that first target to make our goal on the trade with this account. That line is above the top of our fibs because we have had a consolidation that is bounced up on we've got some wicks. You can see that the top of that fib has acted as kind of a resistance level, but we bounced around above it, and so I've moved that up to include these top three. To be truthful with you, I had my box originally set down like this, but I had drawn another box around these three candles looking for a fourth one to give me a pop out of the box tight consolidation here, setting right on top of that line, but I didn't get it. So for demonstration purposes tonight, that's how I drew the box. Does that make sense? Okay, with that one out of the way, let's look at some of these other charts. I just threw up, I guess it's 14 now, but I threw up a dozen that I liked for one reason or another, not necessarily to plan a trade for today, but as a potential watch list item. This is one that's been on my list for a while. It's a rounded bottom breakout. It's been a kind of a J-hook, at least a pullback, and it has now broken out. This would have been an awesome buy if it had bounced up off of the low today. It has not, and so I would probably wait another day and see what happens here. I'm going to give you guys a chance to decide which ones you want to look at. One of them I definitely want to look at is Tandem. EEP, this has been on my list. You can see that tight consolidation after this run-up. Here's the high that defines the top of our box. I'm looking for a breakout there. My stop is right below, and I'm looking for one target trade there. So let's see what that would look like in a trade setup. Let's close this. And by the way, if I do run into trouble today, please note that I'm using, in order to demonstrate those charting features, I'm using a package that's not been tested yet. So just be aware. Earnings should come up about the 9th or 10th or 8th or something like that of August. Very nice setup, nothing bearish in our way here. If we just look at one entry and one exit, we're looking at an entry up here, let's call it 11 bucks. And we're looking at a stop here about, let's call it 10.58, something like that. And what did I do wrong here? I guess that should be 12 1/4. And add a stop loss. No sooner did I tell you about this than we ran into it. Let's go back to EEP. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. 11 bucks. 10.59 or 58 or something like that. And 12 1/4. So it says we can do 300 shares. Let's see what that does. It's still 2.6% of the account, so that's very doable. Only $126 at risk. And if we sell all 300 shares at that first target, we are getting almost 3 to 1. And we are getting our trade goal. So again, this is one that I've been looking at. It's an oil pipeline play, I believe. So EEP is one that you can take a look at, make it come to you, but it's set up nicely. Nice tight consolidation. Okay, let's go back over here. Tandem is one I wanted to look at. Big signal today, bullish engulfing of a doji, but we don't want to chase. It was a 6 1/4, 6 1/3% day today. I would be looking for it to break on out and retest that it's holding this breakout, using this level here as protection for my stop. So that's a pretty significant stop here. Let's see if I can't. Something like 5.5% stop, but we are looking at 10.5% to the first target and almost 20% to the second target. So let's plan out a trade on Tandem. We need to keep an eye on this for earnings. It says they reported on 4/26, so they could be reporting here in another 2 or 3 weeks, probably 3 weeks. So we're looking for an entry. This might even, depending on how it goes, it might go after earnings, but I don't know. It might consolidate till after earnings. Let's call that 25.75. As an entry, and let's call it 24.45 as a stop, with the first target up here about 28.45, and that second target up here around 30.90. Yeah, I apologize, Robin. I I know. I should slow down. It's it's one of those devil, you know, damned if you do, damned if you don't thing. I either sit here and do nothing most of the time, or I uh, I leave you guys behind, and I apologize. But this will be posted on the website on the tutorials page before I go to sleep tonight. So in a few hours. If we did 100 shares, we'd only have 2% of the account at risk, risking 130 bucks. And if we sold 50 of it at the first target, we'd get our 2 to 1, but only 135 bucks. So if we sold all of it there, we're getting 270. So if we sold the other 50 at that second target, we'd be getting 3 to 1, and we would make almost 400 bucks, 392.50 on the trade. So again, I think that's a nice, yeah, 726 makes sense. 3 months after 426. Thank you, Jake. I suspect, by the way, I strongly suspect, I can't prove it, I don't use TOS, you'd have to check, but I suspect they subscribe to Zacks. TOS subscribes to Zacks, and so that's an algorithmic guess, because I bet they have not announced 3 weeks in advance when they're going to report. Most companies announce a week, maybe 2 weeks at most. Yeah, so it's an estimate based on Zach's algorithm. I just bet money, and the source we use for our dates does not do algorithmic guesses. If there's nothing announced as to when the next one is, it just uses the last date available, and we can add 3 months to it and assume we're in the ballpark. So that's one to look at. I'd like to see some follow through on today's signal, but not too far. I don't want it to run too far, and when it breaks out, I want to see a retest holding this trend line and holding this breakout level, and that would then signal an entry. And if we hold that level, I could probably move my stop up too and get an even better reward risk, which might be able to get us some more shares. So that's what we will look at there. Okay, I've been running my yap for about 45 minutes here. Let's do this. Are there any charts that you guys want to look at? Anything anybody else wants to see? If not, I know which other one I want to look at, set up, but I want to see if you've got any tickers you want to look at. You like Clorox, Tom? Oh, I'm sorry, Colgate-Palmolive. What am I thinking? I even did consulting for them. The Monster of Persephone. Okay, so we've got a rounded bottom breakout. Let's see if we can't put a few more lines on this chart. I would say there's a line right around in there. I would say there's probably a line somewhere in this area. And probably, by the way, I'm on a weekly chart. A line down there. Now let's go back to the daily. Again, I've got to wait for the chart to catch up. While it's doing that, I will draw a trend line. I think we can all see that that's the trend recently. I think we can all see that this is a downtrend we need to overcome. So we have not broken the downtrend per se, so this could be a short-term trade. That's something we need to be careful of. And for me, because of that, I would be looking for it, how can I do this? I would be looking for it over in here. That's where I would like to get it. Right here, I don't have enough room. Let's see if I just do this. If I bought it at 65.95 even, I'm looking at, at best, even on a one-day run, like 2.3%. So maybe as a options trade, you might be able to make enough to make it worthwhile. But as a stock trade itself, I need to see it over here to have any chance at all for me to trade it out or to plan it out. So that's kind of how I see it. And sorry if you see it some other way, but that's my take on the chart. This whole area up here, this triangle, is potential trouble here. So there's the trend channel, there's the downtrend from the long-term downtrend, and there's the uptrend from the recent past. So we're running into a squeeze here where we're going to have potential resistance. Do I use a trend line to make sure that I can meet my targets by earnings? Yes, I almost always, and in fact I always do if I've got my brain engaged, draw a trend line. And that's what I'm expecting the ticker to do. And if you watch when I set targets, you'll notice that my entry is usually inside of the trend line and my targets are usually drawn outside of the trend line. So I expect it to meander along that trend line. And that's how I plan time distance. So if this one's up here, it's got to be someplace in the area of August 31st. So if I don't know if they happen to have earnings before then I don't think we're going to be able to make that as a next target before then. This is when I would anticipate we'll run into that. Could it pop up? Sure it could, but you can't plan on what might happen. You can only plan on assuming the trend will continue until it changes. So that's what I use that for. Yeah, Tom, thinking of options, you could probably check the chain and you might be able to find something that makes a lot more sense than a stock trade. Electronic Arts. Again, this is going to be an options trade. There's your bullish engulfing of a doji. We can see let's see. Nope. What do you know? That would actually work. So you can see that this came back to more than a 50% retracement of the run. I don't like that, but if I was taking it, I would take it as a breakout trade here, and I would like to see it come up. You've all seen Doug talk about this. Where is my tool for drawing? And I'll just use a line. But I would like to see the price come up and then come back and prove that this is support and come up off of it and buy someplace in here. That's what I would be looking at this breakout level. So we've got this nice J hook going on. I want to see it break out, come back, and then go from there. So that's what I would be looking at. Let's go to a weekly chart. Or a monthly chart. Yeah, we're at all-time highs apparently. So there's our trend, something like that. and I would be looking for an entry over in here. After it has proven to be support, my stop would be someplace like that. Okay. And my first target is probably going to be up in here. And again, this is going to be an options trade. My second target is going to be up in here. So that's what I would be looking at, again, on a breakout pullback. Yeah, okay, so probably not a trade here, unless you can get really fast moving on an options trade. I don't trade weekly options, so I can't really advise on that one way or the other, how it might lay out, but it's possible you can find something on a weekly options situation. But that's how I see it. Rick added to Dish today, but it has 2 levels of resistance overhead. Do you think it can make money by earnings? Well, look at Dish. Yee. Well, I don't know when he added to it, but I'm certainly not going to add to it. None of these lines have been drawn today. So I was looking at it as a trade someplace back in here, probably on this candle. And I would have been stopped out had I taken it. I certainly wouldn't have added to it after we have broken trend. So I don't like it. And if it's got earnings on the 26th, so that's about right here. I think it's trouble. That's a pretty big move for Dish in a short period of time. I don't think I would. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. Nothing I can do. Every time there's a change, I've got to completely uninstall and completely reinstall Webinato to make their garbage work. So I apologize about that. But yeah, to me, I certainly wouldn't have thrown more money at it, because that's, in my opinion, throwing good money after bad. But I don't know if it had broken trend when he did that or not. But yeah, I certainly wouldn't have added anything after it took out what I had already drawn as a stop line. So yeah, that's a no for me, particularly with a bearish signal there and follow through. That's not an ad. So, but you can't argue with Rick's success. He's just a different. I can't trade his plans. He can't trade mine. Everybody's got their own makeup, style, emotions. Our psychologies are different. You can't. It makes it very, very difficult to trade somebody else's plan. Okay. Any other tickers we want to look at? If not, I want to look at one more, and then we'll call it a night. I don't see anybody typing. So Duluth Trading is one that I've been keeping my eye on here. Gorgeous trend. This is how I draw it off of these touches here. And it just happens to line up with today's low. At one point today, this was a morning star. I'm not sure it still is, but at the very least, it's a bullish engulfing of a doji. So we've got a bull flag here. We have not broken out of that bull flag, so there's no sense getting ahead of ourselves. But you can see this bull flag that we've got in place. I'm looking for a breakout retest, and that's where I would be looking to potentially enter. With off of the weekly chart, I drew a line, support and resistance line, that lined up pretty tightly here to the 38.2 fib extension, and so far we've done less than a 23.6 pullback. If today's bounce was in fact the low, that would be ideal, and then I would also look at a 61.8 as my second target. So let me just quickly plan this out. DLTH. So we've got enough time here. Looks like they won't report until probably the 1st of September. Lots of bullish things going for us here. The only thing is that we're in a pullback, so it's not a bullish indication there, although it probably should be because we've got close to a morning star and close to a bull flag breakout there. Not quite broken out. So let's look at two targets, one entry. If I bought up here somewhere around 25.60 on a breakout and retest with a stop, someplace down here like 24.60, and a first target up here around 28.45. Second target up here around 30.55. Says we can do 125 shares. Let's see what that does for us. 2.5% of the account, so a small position size, $125 of risk, and if we sold 75 of them at that first target, we're getting 11%, only 213, almost 214 dollars, almost 3 to 1, 2.9 to 1. And if we sold the other, whatever that is, 50 at that second target, we pick up another 250 bucks. So we're risking 125 bucks for a chance to make 461. It's all dependent on follow through off of this bounce, breakout and then retest, and then move on from there. Okay, I don't want to keep going too long here, but I will do these last couple. No more tickers, guys. You like Alphabet, I guess, clearly as a options trade. Well, you've got, I think, a bullish engulfing. We opened at 69.99. Yeah, so we've got a bullish engulfing of a doji there, but we've also got clearly some resistance here that we've got to deal with, so don't want to do anything before then. And you know, you're probably looking at someplace around here. I don't think this has been around long enough to be, yeah. So we're going to have to draw fibs. And that's what the fibs are going to look, 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, okay. So that's what the fibs are going to look like. We did a 61.8 pullback, so for me, this is a pass already. I really don't want anything less than a or more than a 38.2 pullback, but certainly nothing more than a 50% pullback of this run. But if you take it, I would take it on a breakout and retest in that area, and I would be looking to make my money in that little 2.5 to 3% run. So for me, I know that it won't plan out because as a stock this makes no sense. So sorry about that, Michael. And Intel. This is kind of a Rick evening star. Truthfully, that hanging man that we had here does not make this an evening star, but at the very least we can call this a trader's best friend to the bearish side. So we do have a signal there. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, Our fibs are going to be drawn like this. We've got, this was a blue ice failure back here. We didn't make a blue ice failure there, so we're looking for a dreaded H pattern to make itself plain there. The problem is we're looking at about a 200 as our our support target on this, and that's only going to be about 6-7%. Even if you draw something like that, we could have some support potentially in there. So I don't like the setup as much. I mean, yes, you have a bearish signal. Yes, the trend is certainly bearish. Let's do it like, but with the 200 down here, the previous low, and a potential line off of these highs over here. I guess we can go to a weekly and see if that lines up to anything. Yeah, but maybe not so much. So even if this line didn't exist, let's just move it out of the way. We're still looking at potential resistance here, 5% away at this low, which is going to probably be about where the 200 is when we get there. And if we have earnings on the 26th, so we've got earnings out so we've got earnings there. That's too much of a risk for me. And the other thing is, with a lot of stocks, frankly, I think sitting on your hands is the way to go right now. There's just too much up in the air. You know, they could decide to make nice on trade, or they could tweet or announce something to the press, not only from the US side, but from the Chinese side or from the European side, that could just crush a semiconductor stock international like Intel. So, you know, it could either get hammered, or they could make nice and the thing could shoot. So it's hard to say. And for me, this just doesn't have enough going for it for me to make a trade. So I apologize about that, but that's my honest thoughts on Intel, and I hope that it gives you some value. I would certainly watch for this breakout level and where the 200 is going to be when we get there. So if you can't make your money in 5.5%, you probably need to pass. So it would have to probably be an options trade, and even so, it has to be a very fast options trade with earnings coming up in a couple weeks. So, well, guys, I want to thank you for coming. Let me go back to this. I'll wait for the screen to reorganize. I thank you again so much for coming, spending some time with me this afternoon. You have a great evening. If you need to reach me, you can contact me at either of these emails, ed@tradervision2020.com or support@tradervision2020.com. And of course, the other links are there if you're interested. So, as I promised, not a sales pitch today, but just showing you some of the things we got coming down the road I'm pretty excited about. So I will look forward to seeing you next week. I think both Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday at 4:15, Thursday at 8 p.m. We have webinars each night. So I'll see you then. Until then, thank you very much. Take care.